So earlier today, I got a chance to talk to Bernie Sanders. I don't know if you guys know this, he's running for president. And we were talking about the fact that he is in the top 2. And now a lot of the media apparently don't realize that, because Sanders' campaign had to put out a memo to the reporters today saying, pointing out that CNN and Washington Post recently ran articles saying, basically, is Bernie's campaign over already? Now, I just like to note for the record before we go to portions of the interview that there are 24 candidates. Bernie's in second place. So if his campaign is over, boy, do I have bad news for the other 22. Okay, so I mean, the bias of the establishment media is unbelievable, and it's actually stunning that they can't see it. They say, oh, Kamala Harris got a good chance in 5th place. Bernie Sanders in 2nd place, no chance. If Bernie Sanders is eliminated, how is she not triple eliminated, right? So but they're so blind, so biased, they can't see it. So anyway, I asked them about Joe Biden being pretty similar to Hillary Clinton on policies, and that perhaps if you're running against Donald Trump, we might have seen that movie before. And I was curious what his response was. Here's what he said. If the Democratic Party selects Joe Biden as its nominee, would it be making the same mistake that it did in picking Hillary Clinton, who lost to Donald Trump?
I fear that it could be. I really do. I fear that you would have a campaign without a lot of energy, without a lot of excitement. Could Joe beat Trump? Yeah, I think he could. I'm not saying that he can't. But I think, we don't want to make the same mistake that we made last time. And sometimes this is where the establishment talks to itself. I think that what the American people want right now is not only defeating Donald Trump, they want a candidate to speak to the pain that millions of people are feeling right now, and to get those people involved in the political process to stand up and fight back so that we can improve the lives of all people in this country.
I don't know if the rest of the media will find that controversial. I think it's fairly straightforward. Joe Biden's policy positions are incredibly similar to Hillary Clinton's, and yet somehow the mainstream media tells us that he is more electable. I literally don't.
Hillary Clinton?
No, more electable than Bernie Sanders.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I literally don't understand that logic. The only thing that they have to hang their hat on is their feeling that Joe Biden is more likable. Yeah, you like him more because he protects the status quo. You don't like Bernie Sanders because he's ending corruption. So, but I don't care what you think, who you like more in your club. He has the same policies that are, again, against the things that the Midwest wants. He's in favor of trade deals written by corporations. He isn't fighting for higher wages. He isn't fighting against corporate power. So I don't understand the logic of it, but I don't know that there is logic to it.
Well, I think they would say, certainly if it was Nate Silver, I guess, and I bring him up only so that I'll get into his next podcast. He would say, based on the polling right now. So in the polling right now, Biden is doing better against Trump than Bernie is doing against Trump. Now we would respond, we've seen Biden run for president before. I don't think that's going to last once he actually has to be a candidate. A lot of that is based off of people's longstanding views of him that had nothing to do with the candidate he would actually be. But that's what they would say now. I don't think that makes sense to make your evaluation based purely on that now. I think that we need more time. Eventually it will be fairly reliable. I mean, we were making the case during the last months of the Democratic primary that the polling showing Bernie doing better against Trump did prove that he was more electable than Clinton versus Trump. And I would say largely, I think if I had to pick, like right now, if you would press a button, one button gives you Biden against Trump, one button gives you Hillary Clinton against Trump, I would put the Biden button. I would think that in America, he probably would do better for some understandable reasons, for some sadly misogynistic reasons.
Yeah, but let's talk about what happened in 2016. Because in 2016, Bernie was doing better against Donald Trump than Hillary Clinton was in all of the polling. And what did the same exact people say in the mainstream media? They say, oh, no, don't believe the polling.
That was a leap year though.
Oh, I see, right. So they're like, no, that polling can't possibly be right. We're gonna completely ignore it. Now, when you have a little bit of data to the other side, they're like, that's it, the polling, it says what it is, right?
Well, and of course, we're talking about polling with Bernie Sanders doing better against Clinton. That is far closer to the actual election day than the polling we're talking about now with Biden.
Yes, and the reason why Biden does well in the polling, at this early stage is the same reason Hillary Clinton did well in the polling in the early stages, because she had tremendous name recognition. So does Joe Biden. Now Bernie Sanders also has a name recognition advantage. We have a perspective, but we do not twist the facts. So if you say Bernie Sanders has an unfair advantage over Kamala Harris because he has more name recognition and hence he does better in the polling, I would say yes, that makes sense. He does, he has a bigger name recognition than Kamala Harris. But Biden has bigger name recognition than Bernie Sanders. So if you say Kamala Harris, hey, give her a chance. She hasn't had a chance to get her name out there enough yet. Well, then the same logic would apply to Bernie versus only against Biden, right? And nope, don't care about logic. So I'm just worried to death they're gonna run a guy who has the same positions as Hillary Clinton when we saw that movie before.
Yeah, it's shown with the power of the media and the way it works, because many smart people know how these things work, but they don't even realize, some don't realize the way that they're convoluting the whole conversation. Look, who had heard of Pete Buttigieg before this cycle? When he came in as one of the 27 folks. So, and then suddenly he's on the cover of magazines and the newest guy off the block. You know that huge town of South Bend, Indiana that only people know about is Notre Dame's there? That's the only thing people know about South Bend, if they even knew that. But now this guy's exploded onto the map because that's what they liked about him. Like, oh man, we can take him in and it's not a big deal. It doesn't scare us. He's not over the top. He's not screaming, but they love him. So it's just way it strikes certain people, and those certain people have such they can change the dial in America what people think, because people will go like, oh man, suddenly he's on the cover of this magazine. He looks like the 40-year-old virgin cover, and then suddenly everybody likes it. It looked just like it. Let's keep it real. They did Buttigieg wrong.
No, well, but that's the only time they've done Buttigieg wrong.
That's also his profile picture.
Okay,
that's his fault.
Look, I'm gonna call it what it is. The rigging has begun. Because there is no logic to the guy in second place. His campaign is, I'm gonna write articles and talk nonstop on air about how his campaign is almost over. But the person in fourth place, fifth place, 22nd place has a perfectly good chance. There is no logic to that at all. Yeah. And hey, let's run a person that's got the same exact policies as Hillary Clinton, the only person who lost to Donald Trump. There's no logic in that either. One last thing though, yeah.
Can I just say on that, and I know that this will be persuasive to literally no one. I get what you're saying when you say that. I don't like the term rigging in this case, because rigging to me makes something virtually impossible. And it's not that, it's influencing, it's manipulating, it's attempting to move the dial. I worry that if we present something as an impossibility, it leads people to apathy, to check out, to think, what's the point? We couldn't possibly win. When like Bernie came so close the last time, it was not impossible. Bernie certainly wouldn't say that it's impossible. The many volunteers who worked for him wouldn't say it's impossible.
No. So look, the good point you're making, John, and in the beginning of that interview, and obviously we'll put up the whole interview on tyt.com, I actually talked about rigging, and I said there are many definitions of rigging. So, but don't assume that one of the definitions is the correct one. So rigging doesn't mean that it's an impossibility. It means one group, whether it's the DNC or one individual like Donna Brazile giving answers to or the questions to Hillary Clinton before a debate. Now that's rigging it. That didn't mean that they didn't have the debate or that Bernie couldn't win the debate. It just means that she rigged the debate in Hillary Clinton's favor.
I guess I would just want to know what people think of. How much of an influence do people think it has to have for it to be considered rigging?
Okay, now so that's a great question, because I think that the mainstream media has an enormous influence, way more than the DNC, way more than the Russians, way more than almost any other factor. They gave Trump a couple of $1 billion in free media coverage. So right now they're talking about, oh, Buttigieg speaks 7 languages, he plays the piano, he's unbelievable. Biden, what a likable guy. What a swell guy Joe Biden is. Bernie Sanders is already finished. Bernie Sanders is a millionaire. Bernie Sanders didn't agree to death squads in Nicaragua or El Salvador. Now you're telling me that isn't going to influence people? And they say with a straight face, no, we're covering him equal. Oh, get the. Nobody believes that. You don't even believe
and
that.
Again, let me be clear. I am not saying there's not an influence. Obviously there is. I'm just saying we need to be careful with our language, because we can put something out there and mean a specific thing, but once it's out there, people just use it. And I have noticed that terminology starts to get looser and looser and looser as more people use it and more time goes by. Words are drained of every ounce of meaning once they're released into the wild.
Yeah, but but I'm saying this word on purpose.
Okay.
Because the mainstream media is incredibly biased, And they say, no, my perspective is the correct perspective. And if you're outside of that, then you're biased. And yet they cannot see that that is the deepest bias you could possibly have. My perspective is privileged, and I will enforce it upon everyone. But yet you don't get to call me biased. Well, that is how you rig a system. And in fact, they did this last time in 2016. And CNN was good enough to have me on to explain it. On Brian Stelter's program, I said, you said the superdelegates voted when they didn't vote. You put it out right up on the beginning and said, Hillary Clinton has a 99% lead before there was a single vote. That's how you rig something, because your perspective is the establishment is correct and Bernie Sanders should never be president. So they're doing it right in front of our eyes. So one more thing about this though, there was a follow-up question because Naomi Klein, she had this great line, she always does. And when she was on here, look, I agree with her, but it rocked my world the way that she framed it. Talking about if we just get rid of Trump and hey, Hillary's back or Biden is in charge or someone who promises no change at all is in charge, we're back to a system so terrible that it produced Donald Trump. So I asked Bernie Sanders about that. Naomi Klein once said on the Young Turks, if we just get rid of Trump, we'll be back to a situation that was so bad it created Trump.
She's exactly right. That's exactly the point. And that is, look, we all want to beat the worst president in American history. No ifs, buts, and maybes about it. And I will support, if I lose this thing, I will be there doing everything I can to defeat Trump. But you want to address the reasons why Trump got elected in the first place. What was that? Is because for too long, the Democratic establishment has ignored the needs of working people all over this country. People work longer hours for low wages. 40 million people living in poverty. The only major country not to guarantee health care to all people is a right. A vigorous effort to combat climate change, dealing with criminal justice reform, immigration reform. Those are issues that are not only the major issues facing this country, income and wealth inequality. How do you not talk about that? We have got to talk about that because it's the right thing to do and it's the way you win an election.
And to the core of that point, look, wages have been stagnant for 40 years. If Biden runs a campaign just like Hillary saying, no, everything's great, let's just go back to quote unquote normal, that is not a winning strategy. So the winning strategy is, no, you're getting screwed and you're right. Your wages have not moved at all. And I'm actually going to change that for the better.
People are so afraid of him winning again, that being Trump, that it's instead of doing something about the damage, there's like, or doing something to change and prevent the damage, it's like, let's just stop the bleeding. And that's going back to what we did before. We're bleeding because he's even worse, but let's just go back to having a cast.
And that was one of the things I was saying before Trump won the first time, that if you put someone that horrendous into power, people are not going to be demanding a revolution necessarily. They're going to be demanding an end to the pain. Now, hopefully that won't be the case, but that was my fear then. And based on the polls, because I can't come up with a much better explanation for why Biden is doing as well as he is, people seem to want to go back to the relative pain and bad situation that at least didn't have Donald Trump. That's my fear.
If we were the mainstream media, we'd say Biden's already eliminated.
Well, if Bernie's eliminated by being in second, if success is so bad, then Biden's twice as screwed as Bernie.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.